We spend our entire lives adding things, thinking that each new achievement will bring the peace we're missing. But maybe the path is exactly the opposite. Maybe freedom isn't in having more, but in needing less. Diogenes chose to live in a barrel not because he despised life, but because he understood something brutal. Everything you need to be happy is a chain. The more you accumulate, the more vulnerable you become. True strength isn't in conquering the world, it's in not depending on it. I remember once, a few years ago, when I looked at my closet and realized I was wearing the same 5 shirts, always the same ones, while 30 others just hung there, taking up space, gathering dust, waiting for a special day that never came. And it wasn't just the closet, it was the bookshelf full of books I swore I'd read. It was the drawers with objects I didn't even remember existed. It was the apps on my phone that I downloaded with the promise they'd change my life, but that I never opened again. It was the online courses I bought and never took. It was the gym clothes sitting there, while I renewed my membership month after month without showing up. It was that strange feeling of being surrounded by things and, at the same time, feeling a huge emptiness. That bothered me in a way I couldn't explain. Because I'm not a minimalist, I was never one of those people who preaches living with 2 shirts and a pair of shoes. But in that moment, I understood something very simple. We accumulate not because we need to, but because we think something outside of us will fill what's missing inside. And the truth is, it doesn't fill it. It never has. Maybe we know this deep down, but we keep accumulating anyway, because stopping and facing what's really happening is scary. It's much easier to buy another shirt than to ask yourself why you feel empty. It's much easier to add something new to your life than to admit that maybe the problem isn't the lack of things, but the excess of them. We romanticize accumulation, call it achievement, growth, evolution. But many times it's just a disguised escape. An escape from yourself, an escape from silence, an escape from those questions we don't want to answer. And the more you accumulate, the harder it gets to see this, because each new thing you add is one more layer between you and the truth. Living with less isn't impoverishing your life. It's removing what prevents you from seeing what really matters. This phrase sounds cliché, I know, but it carries a deep truth that we ignore all the time. When you eliminate excess, clarity appears. It's not magic. It's not cheap self-help. It's just the obvious being revealed. Think with me. How many times have you felt overwhelmed, tired, without energy? But when you stop to think, you couldn't identify exactly why. You look at your routine and nothing absurd is happening. You look at your problems and they're not that big, but still you're exhausted. And then you keep searching for complex explanations. Maybe you think it's anxiety. Maybe you think it's depression. Maybe you think you need therapy, medication, vacation, radical change. And all of that might be true. I'm not saying it isn't. But sometimes, many times, the weight you feel doesn't come from a big trauma, from a deep wound, from something wrong with you. It simply comes from carrying too much. Too many objects, too many commitments, too many expectations, too many relationships, too many apps, too many notifications, too many choices. We live in an era where having more of everything seems to be the answer to anything. But the truth is that the more you have, the more you need to maintain, the more you need to organize, the more you need to protect, the more you need to worry. And that's exhausting. It exhausts in a silent, invisible way that corrodes your energy without you noticing, until one day you wake up and can't take it anymore. Except at that point, you're already so used to the weight that you can't even imagine you can live another way. The less you need, the harder it is for the world to control you. This is one of the most powerful phrases I've ever heard, and it comes straight from cynic philosophy, from those guys that society called crazy, but who, deep down, saw things with brutal clarity. Needs create dependency, simplicity creates freedom. Think about how it works. You need a car, so you depend on fuel, insurance, maintenance, parking, a job that pays for all of it. You need a big apartment, so you depend on a high salary, a stable career, constant approval, not being able to risk changes because you have too many fixed bills. You need brand name clothes, so you depend on trends, social validation, looking successful in the eyes of people you don't even know well. You need likes, so you depend on algorithms, approval from strangers, living a performative life that isn't always yours, posting things you don't even want to post just because you know they'll generate engagement. You need professional recognition, so you depend on bosses, colleagues, performance evaluations, always being available, always productive, always showing you deserve to be there. And so it goes. Each thing you add to your life as a necessity is a new chain. And we romanticize these chains, call them achievements, lifestyle, success, fulfillment. But deep down, you feel that the more you need, the less free you are. You become hostage to your own choices. You create a prison so sophisticated, so comfortable, so socially accepted that you don't even notice you're trapped. And the worst part is you defend this prison. You call it responsibility, maturity, adult life. Wisdom lies in balancing what's useful and what's weight. And no one can decide that for you. There's no formula, no recipe, no instruction manual. There's only the honest question. Does what I carry serve me or enslave me? Does it give me freedom or trap me? Does it make me live more or just help me survive better? And you need to be brutally honest in that answer, because it's very easy to lie to yourself. It's very easy to justify everything. It's very easy to think you need something just because everyone around you needs it too. We live in a culture that sells the idea that having more always improves your life. It's constant propaganda, from the day you're born until the day you die. In commercials, on social media, in family conversations, in society's invisible demands. More money, more experiences, more recognition, more followers, more options, more technology, more products, more achievements, more everything. And then you look at your life and realize that, despite having much more than your parents had, than your grandparents had, despite having access to things past generations didn't even dream of, you don't feel happier. Maybe you even feel more lost, more anxious, more empty. And this confuses you, because it shouldn't be like this. You have everything, or at least you have much more than you'd need to have. So why do you still feel like something's missing? Because accumulation rarely fills the void. Many times, it just hides the real problem. You buy, you consume, you distract yourself, you occupy every free second with something, but that feeling that something's missing stays there, intact, waiting for the moment when you stop, the moment when you're alone with yourself, the moment when there's nothing left to distract you. And then the void appears, stronger than ever, and you panic. You run to fill it again. You add one more thing. You search for one more distraction. You think that maybe the next thing will be the one that finally completes you. But it won't. It never will. Because the void isn't a lack of something external. It's disconnection from something internal. It's the distance between who you really are and who you're trying to be. It's the distance between what you really want and what you think you should want. It's the distance between your authentic life and the performative life you built to fit in. And as long as you don't look at this, as long as you keep trying to fill the hole with things, it only gets bigger. I'm not saying this to make you anxious, but to wake you up. Because we lose years, decades, our entire lives, chasing things we don't even really want deep down. We only think we want them because everyone around us is running in the same direction. And it's scary to stop and realize that maybe you've spent your whole life pursuing dreams that weren't even yours. Dreams that were planted in you by advertising, by social pressure, by family expectations, by constant comparison with others. Each object, commitment, or habit brings an emotional and mental cost. This is something we never stop to calculate. We only think about the immediate benefit, the momentary satisfaction, the pleasure of having something new, the promise that it will improve our life somehow. But we never think about the invisible cost that comes with it. That book on the shelf you never read charges you every time you look at it, because it reminds you of a promise you made to yourself and didn't keep, because it reminds you that you're not the disciplined person you'd like to be. That app on your phone you installed to be more productive charges you every time you open it and don't use it, because it reminds you that you're still not where you'd like to be, because it reminds you of all the improved versions of yourself you promised to become, but never became. That friendship you maintain only out of obligation charges you emotional energy every time you need to fake interest, fake that everything's okay, fake that it matters, fake that you still have something in common with that person besides the past. That course you bought and never took charges you every time you see the renewal email, because it reminds you of the enthusiasm you felt when you bought it, reminds you how much you believed this time would be different, reminds you of one more broken promise. And so it goes. Each thing you have, each commitment you take on, each habit you maintain, brings weight. A small weight, almost imperceptible, but that keeps adding up, keeps accumulating, until you're carrying tons and don't even notice where it comes from. Living with less cuts these invisible drains. Lightness doesn't come from having things, but from not carrying useless weight. And useless weight isn't just physical, it's emotional, mental, spiritual. It's everything you carry without necessity, without will, without consciousness, without real choice. Just because one day you thought you needed it and never questioned it again. Just because you're on autopilot, accepting everything that appears in front of you without filtering, without asking if that really makes sense for who you are now, for the life you really want to live. I completely understand when you look at your life and feel like you're carrying a piano on your back, but can't identify where this weight comes from. It's not a piano. It's 1,000 little pebbles. It comes from 1,000 little things you accepted without thinking, that you added without questioning, that you maintain by inertia. And freedom begins when you stop accepting everything automatically and start questioning each weight you carry. When you finally give yourself permission to let go of what doesn't serve anymore, what never served, what you only carry because you think you should carry it. Diogenes was a philosopher most people have never heard of, but who lived a life so radical, so provocative, so challenging, that to this day we're still trying to understand what he was trying to tell us. He chose to live inside a barrel in the streets of Athens with almost nothing, because he wanted to prove a point. That true strength lies in depending on almost nothing. He lived with the basics because he wanted to be free, not limited. And this is important to understand, because most people look at Diogenes' life and think he was punishing himself, that he was a masochist, that he hated life, that he was running away. But it wasn't any of that. It wasn't masochism. It wasn't self-sabotage. It wasn't hatred for the world. It was intelligence. It was clarity. It was courage. Because he realized something that most of us take our entire lives to realize, if we realize it at all, that each thing you add to your life as a necessity is a vulnerability. Each thing you need to have to be happy is a weak point. If you need a lot to be happy, you become hostage to many variables. You become vulnerable to changes, losses, frustrations. You build a house of cards so high, so elaborate, so fragile, that any wind can knock it all down. But if you need little, you become more stable, more autonomous, more free, more strong. You build on rock, not on sand. Diogenes chose to live with the minimum not because he despised comfort, but because he valued freedom above all. He understood that each additional comfort comes with an invisible chain, and he preferred to be free and uncomfortable than comfortable and trapped. Diogenes' life is a reminder that freedom is born in detachment. Not in romantic detachment, the kind we see in Instagram quotes, in beautiful posts with sunset photos, but in real, visceral detachment that hurts, that bothers, that forces you to face the fact that you've spent your whole life clinging to things that were never essential. The story goes that Alexander the Great, when he heard about Diogenes, became curious to meet him. Alexander was the most powerful man in the world at the time. He had conquered entire nations, had unimaginable riches, had everything society considers success, and he went to Diogenes, who was lying in the sun, and asked if there was anything he could do for him. Anything. Diogenes looked at Alexander and said, "Yes, get out of my sun." This story is powerful because it shows the brutal contrast between two ways of living. Alexander had everything, but needed everything to feel powerful. Diogenes had nothing, but needed nothing to feel free. And when you finally understand this, something changes. Not immediately, not magically, but gradually you begin to notice that it's possible to live with less and feel more. It's possible to have less and be more. It's possible to depend on less and be more whole. Diogenes wasn't perfect. He didn't have all the answers. He wasn't a saint, but he had something most people don't have: absolute clarity about what really matters. When everything seems important, nothing really is. This is one of the great traps of modern life. We're bombarded by information, options, stimuli, false urgencies, constant demands, invisible pressures, and in the middle of all this, we completely lose the ability to distinguish what's essential from what's noise. You open your phone and have 50 notifications, all screaming for attention, all seeming important, all creating that feeling that you need to respond now, that something urgent is happening. But when you stop to analyze, most of those notifications are completely irrelevant. They're promotional emails, they're likes on photos, they're messages in groups you don't even care about, they're updates from apps you don't even use. But your brain doesn't know this. To your brain, each notification is a stimulus that needs to be processed, that creates a small dose of anxiety, that takes you out of the present moment. You open your email and have 100 messages waiting for a response. You look at your calendar and everything's packed, every slot filled, every day crammed with commitments. You look at your house and it's full of things, every corner occupied, every drawer overflowing. You look at your mind and it's chaotic, jumping from one thought to another, never managing to go deep into anything, always on the surface, always running. And then you ask yourself, how did I get here? How did I let things get like this? How did I lose control? And the answer is simple, but painful. You never said no. You never stopped to filter. You never established limits. You accepted everything because you thought you had to accept it, because everyone around you was accepting it, because you were afraid of losing something if you said no, afraid of being seen as lazy, as uninterested, as someone who doesn't care. But the truth is, you've already lost. You've lost clarity, you've lost focus, you've lost peace. You've lost the ability to be present, to go deep into something, to really live instead of just reacting. Excess creates noise, distractions, and false priorities. It makes you believe that everything's urgent, that everything's important, that you need to handle everything. And then you live in a constant state of emergency, always running, always late, always feeling like you're leaving something important aside, because you are. You're leaving aside what really matters because you're too busy with what doesn't matter. By reducing stimuli, the essential emerges clearly and honestly. It's like cleaning a dirty window. When you remove all that layer of dirt, suddenly you can see clearly what's on the other side. And what you see might surprise you. Maybe you'll discover that the things you thought were important aren't that important after all. And maybe you'll discover that the things you were ignoring are exactly what you should be prioritizing. But you can only see this when you reduce the noise, when you create space, when you stop adding and start subtracting. Peace doesn't come from new achievements, but from the absence of useless weight. I repeat this because it's fundamental, because it's something we need to hear 1,000 times until we really understand. We spend our entire lives thinking that peace will come when we achieve something, the dream job, the perfect relationship, the ideal house, the incredible trip, the deserved recognition, the perfect body, the full bank account. We spend our lives postponing peace, always putting it on the next step, always in the next achievement. We tell ourselves, when I get this, then I'll be able to rest, then I'll be able to relax, then I'll finally feel good. But then you achieve it, and peace doesn't come. You achieve it again, and peace stays far away. You achieve it one more time, and one more, and one more, and you realize it's not the way. You realize that peace isn't waiting for you at the top of the mountain, isn't hidden at the end of the rainbow. Because peace isn't in adding, it's in subtracting. It's not in having more, it's in needing less. It's not in achieving something external, it's in letting go of something internal. A simple life decreases anxiety, and increases presence. Think about it. When you have less to worry about, there's more space to be present. When you have fewer stimuli competing for your attention, you can finally focus on what's happening now, in this moment, in this breath. When you have fewer objects to take care of, fewer relationships to maintain out of obligation, fewer expectations to fulfill, fewer masks to wear, you finally breathe. You finally manage to stop running. You finally manage to simply be. Internal silence appears when the external is simplified. And internal silence isn't emptiness, it's not sadness, it's not absence of life, it's not depression, it's presence, it's clarity, it's the ability to be with yourself without needing constant distraction, without needing to fill every second with something, without needing to run from yourself all the time. This might sound cliché, but it carries a deep truth. You don't find peace by running, you find peace by stopping. And you can't stop if your life is too full. If every second is occupied, if every corner is filled, if every moment demands something from you, you need space, physical space, mental space, emotional space, space to breathe, to think, to feel, to simply exist without needing to produce anything, without needing to prove anything, without needing to be anything other than what you already are. And this space doesn't appear when you add one more thing to your life. It appears when you finally have the courage to let go. Living with less requires courage because it goes against what society expects. And I'm not talking about heroic courage, the kind we see in movies, the kind that involves big dramatic gestures. I'm talking about the courage to be judged, to be misunderstood, to be seen as strange, as someone who didn't understand the rules of the game, as someone who's wasting their life. Because most people live to accumulate, and few live to be free. Most people define success as having more, and few define success as needing less. Most people live performing, proving, showing, displaying, competing, and few live simply being, simply existing without needing constant external validation. And when you choose to live differently, people don't understand. They question your choices. They judge your priorities. They think you're running away, that you're giving up, that you're not ambitious enough, that you're not taking advantage of opportunities, that you're being lazy, that you're wasting your potential. Your family asks when you're going to buy a house, when you're going to change cars, when you're finally going to really settle down. Your friends don't understand why you refuse invitations, why you don't buy certain things, why you're not chasing the same things they're chasing. Your co-workers find it strange that you don't want the promotion, don't want to work more hours, don't want to take on more responsibilities. And maybe you start to doubt yourself. Maybe you start to think you're wrong, that you should be wanting more like everyone else, that you should be more dissatisfied, more restless, more ambitious. But Diogenes showed that wisdom is choosing your path. Not the path others expect from you, not the path that looks most impressive on Instagram, not the path that will make your resume look better, but the path that makes sense for who you really are. And this requires courage. Not the courage to face the world, but the courage to face yourself and admit that maybe everything you were chasing never really made sense. The courage to admit you were living on autopilot, following a script written by other people, pursuing dreams that were planted in you by advertising, by pressure, by fear of being left behind. The courage to stop and ask, but do I really want this? Or do I just think I should want it? And this question can change everything. The greatest source of suffering is confusing desire with necessity. I believe this deeply because I've seen it in myself. I've seen it in everyone around me, and I've felt firsthand how much this confusion can destroy you slowly. Because when you confuse the two, you transform everything into urgency, everything into desperation, everything into life or death. You think you need that car, that outfit, that recognition, that validation, that achievement, when actually you just desire it, and it's okay to desire. Desire is human, desire is natural, desire is part of being alive. But necessity is something else. Necessity is what you really can't live without, what's fundamental for your survival, for your health, for your basic well-being. And when you separate one from the other, When you can look at something and distinguish whether you really need it or just desire it, you discover you need very little. This discovery is liberating, because it means you can have desires without enslaving yourself to them. You can want something without thinking you'll die if you don't have it. You can admire, appreciate, even pursue, but without that desperate tension of someone who thinks life only makes sense if they succeed. Making an analogy, it's like the difference between enjoying music and thinking you need to be listening to music all the time to feel good. In the first case, music is pleasure. It's something that enriches your life when it's present, but doesn't destroy you when it's absent. In the second case, music is dependency. It's something without which you can't function, something you constantly need to fill the internal silence that scares you. And we turn everything into dependency. We transform desires into necessities, preferences into urgencies, wants into obligations. We need likes to feel validated, need compliments to feel valuable, need achievements to feel sufficient, need attention to feel seen, need success to feel important. And then life becomes an endless race because you never reach a point where you can finally stop and feel that everything's okay. Something's always missing. There's always something more to achieve. Always a next level, always someone doing better, always a new bar to reach. And you lose yourself in this infinite comparison, in this desperate search to fill a void that only grows the more you try to fill it. Because you're trying to fill an internal hole with external things. And it doesn't work. It never worked. It never will work. The internal void only decreases when you stop trying to fill it and start understanding where it comes from. Start accepting that it's part of being human. Start making peace with your own incompleteness. The less you own, the less you maintain. This gives precious hours back to your life. Hours you spent organizing, cleaning, fixing, updating, managing, worrying. Hours you spent looking for things in the mess, deciding what to wear among 1,000 options, choosing which series to watch among hundreds of possibilities, answering messages that don't matter, maintaining relationships that don't nourish you, fulfilling obligations you don't even remember why you took on. Hours you spent worrying about what others will think, planning how you'll protect everything you have, comparing what you have with what others have. Hours you spent envying, competing, performing. The time you save becomes energy to live and not just survive. And this is one of the most important differences you can make in your life, because most people are just surviving. Waking up early, working all day, paying bills, keeping everything running, responding to demands, meeting expectations, and at the end of the day, there's nothing left. There's no time to really think, to create something meaningful, to be present with those you love, to simply feel without running to the next commitment. Only exhaustion is left. Only that deep exhaustion that doesn't go away with a night's sleep. That feeling of always owing something, of always being late, of always missing something. And then you go to sleep, wake up the next day, and repeat. The same cycle, every day, every month, every year. And you think this is how it has to be, that everyone lives like this, that there's no alternative, that this is what it means to be an adult, to be responsible, to be productive. But there is an alternative. The alternative is to reduce, not because you're lazy, not because you gave up on having a good life, but because you realized that life isn't about keeping everything running perfectly. It's not about always having the house tidy, the calendar always full, the resume always impressive. It's about living. And you can't live if you're spending all your energy maintaining, if you're spending all your time managing a life that's become too big, too complex, too heavy. When you simplify, when you cut the excess, suddenly there's time, real time. Not those little minutes stolen between one commitment and another, but whole hours, whole days, a whole life that's finally truly yours. Full environments leave the mind full. Simple environments leave the mind light. I don't know if you've noticed, but the space around you directly affects your internal space. When you're in a messy place, with things scattered around, with visual stimuli everywhere, your mind can't rest. It keeps processing everything, trying to organize, trying to make sense. And you don't even notice. But this is exhausting. It's a constant drain of energy. On the other hand, when you're in a simple, clean, organized space, the mind relaxes. It stops working in the background. It finally rests. The physical space you free up transforms into available mental space. And available mental space is one of the most valuable things you can have, because it's in this space that ideas emerge, that clarity appears, that you can finally think deeply. But we live with such a full mind, so overloaded, that we never have this space. We never have internal silence. We never have pause. And then we think we're losing the ability to think, to create, to feel. But we're not. You're just living in an environment that doesn't allow these things to happen. An environment isn't just physical. Your digital environment is as important as the physical one. How many apps do you have on your phone that you never use? How many open conversations do you maintain just out of obligation? How many notifications do you receive per day that mean nothing? Your feed is an environment. Your email inbox is an environment. Your WhatsApp groups are environments. And each of these environments is affecting your mind, is occupying space, is creating noise. Simplifying the digital is as important as simplifying the physical, maybe even more, because the digital follows you everywhere. You can leave home and leave the mess behind, but the digital mess is always there, in your pocket, calling your attention, fragmenting your focus, preventing you from really resting. When you stop living to impress, you gain freedom to be who you are. This is another brutal truth we avoid facing, because admitting you're living to impress is admitting you're living a lie, is admitting you built a persona that isn't really you, is admitting you're more concerned with image than with substance. And nobody wants to admit this. Nobody wants to look in the mirror and recognize they're performing life instead of living it. But stop for a second and ask yourself, how many of your choices are really yours? How many did you make because you genuinely wanted to, and how many did you make because it would make you look good in others' eyes? How many are attempts to prove something to someone? How many are performances? Do you buy that outfit because you really like it, or because you want people to see you in a specific way? Because you want to give an impression? Because you want to be associated with a certain status? Do you post that photo because you want to keep the memory? Or because you want to show that your life is interesting? That you're having experiences worthy of envy, that you're doing well? Do you accept that commitment because you really want to go, or because you're afraid of being judged if you say no, afraid of being seen as antisocial, as boring, as someone who doesn't know how to enjoy life? Do you maintain that friendship because there's still genuine connection, or because you have history, because it would be weird to distance yourself, because you don't want to be seen as the person who abandons friends? Status imprisons, authenticity liberates. Diogenes proved that life gets lighter when others' opinions lose value. And losing value doesn't mean you don't care about anyone. Doesn't mean you become a selfish person who only thinks about themselves. Doesn't mean you stop caring about the impact you have on others. It means you stop basing your choices on what others will think. It means you stop living in fear of judgment, in fear of not fitting in fear of being different. It means you finally allow yourself to be who you really are, with all your peculiarities, with all your contradictions, with all your flaws, without needing to prove anything, without needing to justify yourself, without needing to perform. And this is scary, I know, because we spent our whole lives building masks, learning to perform, trying to be accepted, trying to fit in, trying not to be excluded. We learned since childhood that we need to adapt, that we need to be pleasant, that we need to meet expectations. And now you're telling me I can simply be myself, that I can stop worrying so much about what others think. It seems dangerous, it seems risky, but the truth is, you'll never be accepted by everyone. Never. No matter how hard you try, no matter how much you mold yourself, there will always be someone who doesn't like you, who doesn't approve, who judges you. And even if it were possible to be accepted by everyone, the price would be too high. The price would be giving up yourself, would be spending your whole life being who you're not, would be dying without ever having really lived as yourself. Reducing excess generates calm, focus, and emotional stability. It's not theory, it's experience. When you simplify your life, your mind stops chasing 1,000 stimuli. It stops jumping from one thing to another without ever really going deep. It finally calms down. And when it calms down, you can focus. You can be present. You can do one thing at a time without the constant feeling that you're forgetting something important. The result is a balance that can't be bought. No therapy, no retreat, no mindfulness course will give you this if you continue living in a chaotic life. Because balance isn't something you add, it's something that appears when you remove what's causing imbalance. And what's causing imbalance isn't a big trauma, isn't a single wrong thing. It's accumulation. It's 1,000 little things you never stop to question. It's habits you maintain on automatic, relationships you carry out of obligation, objects you keep out of attachment. And when you finally start letting go, life breathes. You breathe. And you realize that the peace you were looking for was always available. You just needed to stop piling things on top of it. Having less means needing less from the system around you. You become more independent in how you live, decide, and feel. This autonomy is one of the deepest forms of freedom. Because freedom isn't just being able to do what you want. It's not depending on approval to feel good. It's not depending on consumption to feel complete. It's not depending on recognition to feel valuable. It's not depending on anything outside of you to be at peace with yourself. And this doesn't mean you become a hermit, that you reject everything, that you live isolated. It means you build such a solid internal foundation that external things stop defining you. You can have, you can enjoy, you can participate, but without that desperate dependency, without that feeling that if something goes wrong, you'll fall apart. Because you know that at the end of the day, you're okay, you have enough, you are enough, and nobody can take that away from you. When you remove the superfluous, energy is left for what really matters. Think about how it works. You have 100 things in your life competing for your attention, each one demanding a little piece of you. At the end of the day, you're exhausted, but you didn't do anything significant. Because your energy was diluted in 1,000 little things that don't matter. Now imagine you cut 90 of those things. 10 are left. Suddenly you have real energy to invest in those 10 things. And then you realize it's possible to go deep. It's possible to do it well. It's possible to be really present. The essential doesn't wear you down. It sustains you. A strong life is built on a few solid foundations, not on 1,000 fragile ones. And we confuse quantity with quality all the time. We think that the more things we have, the richer life will be. But the truth is the opposite. The more things you have, the more diluted your life becomes. The less you have, the more concentrated, deeper, more meaningful it becomes. Detaching isn't losing something. It's recovering your ability to live without fear. Dependency creates anxiety. Detachment creates confidence. Think about how you feel when you're desperately attached to something. It could be a relationship, a job, an object, an idea about who you should be, an image you built, a status you achieved. You live in fear of losing. You live tense, always alert, always trying to control, always trying to guarantee that it won't go away, always monitoring, always protecting. And this paralyzes you. You stop living, stop risking, stop being authentic, stop making real choices, because anything can threaten what you're holding onto so tightly. You start making decisions based on fear instead of based on what you really want. You accept bad situations because you're afraid of losing what you have. You tolerate disrespect because you're afraid of being alone. You stay in jobs that destroy you because you're afraid you won't get another one. You maintain toxic relationships because you're afraid that nobody else will want you. You cling to objects because they represent achievements, and losing them would be losing part of your identity. And so you build an entire life based on fear, on protection, on control. Now think about the opposite. Think about how you'd feel if you knew that, whatever happens, you'll be okay. Not because you have guarantees, not because nothing bad will happen, not because you're shielded against losses, but because you know you can handle it. Because you no longer depend so much on things to feel whole. Because you built such a solid internal foundation that external losses don't destroy you anymore. Living with less gives you back internal power, not the power to control the world, to guarantee nothing will go wrong, to avoid all pain, but the power to not be destroyed when things go wrong, the power to lose and stay standing, the power to start over, the power to be flexible instead of rigid, to be resilient instead of fragile. And this power, this confidence, is something nobody can take from you, because it doesn't depend on external circumstances. It depends on your relationship with yourself, on your ability to be okay even when things aren't perfect, on your acceptance of impermanence and uncertainty as inevitable parts of life. Maintaining objects, relationships, and routines out of obligation is exhausting. We live overloaded because we don't question what we carry. There are people who maintain friendships that no longer make sense because they're afraid of hurting someone, because they have shared history, because it would be weird to distance themselves after so many years. There are people who keep objects they haven't used in years, sometimes decades, because they might need them someday, because they were expensive when bought, because they were gifts from someone, because they have sentimental value, even if they have no real value. There are people who follow routines they hate because they think it has to be that way, because everyone does it that way, because it would be irresponsible to do it differently, because changing would require energy you don't have. And all of this weighs, all of this drains. Each object you keep without using occupies physical and mental space. Each relationship you maintain out of obligation charges you emotional energy. Each routine you follow without questioning robs you of autonomy. Releasing weight is recovering vital energy. It's as if you've been carrying a backpack full of rocks for so many years that you don't even remember what it's like to walk without it. Each rock represents something you maintain out of obligation, out of fear, out of guilt, out of inertia. In the beginning, when you were young, the backpack seemed light. A few little rocks, no big deal. But as the years pass, you add more rocks, and more rocks, and more rocks. One little rock for each expectation you accept. One little rock for each object you accumulate. One little rock for each commitment you take on. One little rock for each should you incorporate. And there comes a point where you can barely walk. You're bent over by the weight, you're exhausted, you're suffering, but you keep carrying it because you think you have to carry it, because everyone around you is also carrying heavy backpacks, because letting go seems impossible, seems wrong, seems dangerous. And then someone asks you why you're carrying all this, and you don't even know how to answer, because you never stopped to question it. You just accepted that it was like this. That carrying weight is part of being an adult, of being responsible, of having a real life. But it doesn't have to be. You can open the backpack, you can look at each rock honestly and ask yourself, does this still make sense? Does this still serve me? Does this still matter? Is this mine, or is it from someone I tried to be and no longer am? And let go, one by one. And realize that with each rock you let go, you get lighter, breathe deeper, walk faster. Living becomes easier. Living with less is wise because it gives you back freedom, time, and peace, 3 things nobody can buy. Diogenes didn't preach poverty, he preached intelligence. He wasn't running from life, he was choosing to live in a way that made sense to him. And the way that makes sense to him might not be the way that makes sense to you. And that's okay. The point isn't to copy Diogenes, isn't to live in a barrel, isn't to give up everything. The point is to understand the principle. It's to realize that the simple life is an act of strength, not of lack. It's to realize that you have a choice, that you can question, that you can let go, that you can live in a way different from what everyone around you is living. And this doesn't make you inferior, doesn't make you a failure, doesn't make you less. It makes you free, it makes you light, it makes you present. And at the end of the day, isn't that what everyone's looking for? Freedom to be who you are, lightness to live without weight, presence to enjoy what matters. We're just looking in the wrong places. We think we'll find it by accumulating, when actually we find it by letting go. We think we'll find it by having more, when actually we find it by needing less. And about this shift in perspective, I left something in the pinned comment that deepens this reflection. And when you finally understand this, something changes. Not immediately, not dramatically, but gradually. You start to question, you start to let go, you start to realize what really matters, and you discover it was always simpler than you imagined. Living with less isn't about giving up on life, it's about getting it back. It's about realizing you spent too much time carrying weights that were never yours, chasing things that never completed you, trying to impress people who don't really care. Diogenes wasn't crazy, he just saw with a clarity that scared others. And maybe it's time for you to see too. It doesn't have to be radical, you don't have to change everything at once, but start questioning, start letting go, and see what happens when you finally stop adding and start subtracting. The lightness you're looking for is on the other side of detachment, and it's always been waiting for you. If this video made sense to you, if it helped you see something that was invisible, hit the like button down below and subscribe to the channel to continue this conversation. See you in the next one.